News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Monday night, how are you? Good evening and welcome to Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Mark Dolan.
I wish I'd known then what we all know now. The post office was lying on an industrial scale to me and other ministers.
Bombshell evidence emerges that suggests Ed Davey dismissed and ignored numerous pleas from the post office scandal victims. So, should the Lib Dem leader stand down? But Rishi Sunak has his own problems in his own party, such as whose great idea was it to replace the disgraced Tory MP Peter Bone with his girlfriend? You couldn't make it up. Elsewhere, benefits claimants are through the roof with depression and anxiety. Now are the leading reasons. So I'm asking tonight, is the serious issue of mental illness being exploited by some to game the welfare system? It's a tough topic, but one that we won't shy away from. Fleet Street icon Kelvin McKenzie will give his unmissable opinion on the Joey Barton sexism row. Plus, I go into battle with the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, after he took exception to these comments. Reform UK project with admirable aims, goals and policies risks sweeping him to an historic landslide. Well, Richard's been on Twitter. He is not happy. Will Tice play nice? I'm not holding my breath. Talking about fireworks, on my panel tonight, delighted to have the formidable Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda de Lucy. So it's absolutely freezing out there, folks. We're turning up the temperature here in the studio for what's going to be a toasty couple of hours. Get the kettle on and let's get to work. Your feedback is my priority. Email me now. Have the Tories used up all of their chances with the electorate? Mark@gbnews.com. And I look back on a day that's seen junior doctors put pay over patients yet again, Ed Davey fighting for his job, and yet more Tory chaos. A blockbuster 2 hours coming right after the news headlines and Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. We start this bulletin with some breaking news. It's concerning the former Wales and British and Irish Lions fullback JPR Williams. He has died at the age of 74. JPR won 55 caps for Wales, his former club Bridgend, making that announcement within the last hour, saying Bridgend Ravens are devastated to announce the passing of JPR Williams, one of Bridgend's most decorated players and an icon of world rugby. JPR served the club most recently as our president. Our thoughts with JPR's family and friends at this sad time. JPR Williams, who's died today at the age of 74. Now, the main story on GB News tonight is that the Post Office Minister has said tonight securing justice for the victims of the Horizon IT scandal and making sure such a tragedy never happens again is his highest priority. At the time, the former Post Office boss, Paula Venables, denied there were problems with the Horizon IT system, which showed money was missing from Post Office branches at reckoning up time, implying theft. As a result, hundreds of postmasters and mistresses were convicted, jailed and bankrupted. Some even took their own lives. Well, now there are calls for Ms Venables to be stripped of her CBE. And Kevin Hollinrake has said this evening it's perfectly reasonable for people to suggest it, an idea also supported by the Prime Minister. Mr Hollinrake said he'll update MPs about the government's plans to help those affected by the end of this week. Well, tonight MPs are debating the offshore petroleum bill as Parliament returns for the first session of 2024. If you're watching on television, you can see these live pictures coming to us now from the House of Commons. If the bill passes, this is its second reading, by the way, the legislation will mandate that licences for oil and gas projects in the North Sea are awarded annually. It's already led to the resignation of the Conservative MP Chris Skidmore, who says the law would show the UK is rowing ever further back from its climate commitments. A lot more snow and sleet is on the way this evening, with ice warnings issued for southern England and Wales. The Met Office issuing a yellow alert effective until tomorrow morning. An amber cold health alert has also been issued for parts of England, triggering local responses to assist older people or those with cardiovascular or respiratory conditions. And the cold snap set to continue throughout the week. Sir Keir Starmer, meanwhile, visited flood-hit areas in the East Midlands today, promising that a Labour government would do more to protect people's homes. That's after Labour accused the government of being asleep at the wheel over flood warnings, of which 160 remain in place after thousands of homes were flooded. Rishi Sunak says the government has invested £5.2 billion in flood defences. 3 energy firms have been permitted to resume force-fitting prepayment meters in households. EDF, Octopus and Scottish Power were temporarily banned from doing so following a scandal around the practice. Now firms will have to make at least 10 attempts to contact a customer before an installation, as well as conducting a welfare visit. Plus, firms won't be allowed to put meters into the highest risk households. And lastly, the actor Idris Elba is calling for an immediate ban of machetes and so-called zombie knives as he launches his Don't Stop Your Future campaign today. The Hollywood star was speaking with families of victims today, and on display were a set of folded clothes, each representing someone who died as a result of knife crime, displayed in Parliament Square in central London. Last summer, the Home Office said tougher measures on weapons would be introduced, but legislation hasn't yet passed. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What a day! The London mayor rolls over to the trade unions to see off a damaging strike. I agree with GB News super signing Boris Johnson, who says this is a foretaste of life under Labour for the next 5 years. I'll be tackling that in my 10 o'clock monologue. But meanwhile, the junior doctors perform an empathy bypass. Yes, they're going on strike at the height of the flu season, causing yet more cancelled appointments, risking lives and adding to the almost 8 million people now waiting for treatment. Meanwhile, remember when we stayed at home to save the NHS? Well, the junior doctors are now staying at home to further destroy it. The junior doctors do a great job, but it's a joke to say that they're underpaid. This industrial action in the NHS is enough to make you sick. So too is the post office scandal, and pressure is growing on Lib Dem leader Ed Davey over his role as Minister for Postal Affairs in the 2010 coalition government. Because concerned letters from devastated postmasters were left ignored as Davey swallowed what proved to be a pack of lies from Post Office senior management. This is one of the worst miscarriages of justice in the history of this country, and it's shocking that Fujitsu, the company behind this faulty Horizon software, continue to receive massive government contracts. The Express report, they've pocketed 200 million quid in the last year alone. There you go. Fujitsu are now deep in the jitsu, and rightly so. The only positive from this is that for the first time since he became leader of the Lib Dems, we're actually talking about Ed Davey. But sadly for him, the debate is how long he now stays in the job. I'll discuss that with the fearless former Sun editor Kelvin McKenzie before the end of the hour. So, Ed Davey's trying to get into number 10. Rishi Sunak is desperately trying to stay there. But has poor old Rishi got any more hair to pull out of his head? As disgraced Tory MP Peter Bone is replaced by, wait for it, his girlfriend, who will now run for his seat in a by-election, while Sunak has got a bone to pick with whoever came up with that ridiculous idea. This is more embarrassment the PM doesn't need, and he refused to endorse the new candidate for Wellingborough whilst out and about campaigning today, without, by the way, a jacket. Did he not see the forecast? He must have frozen to death.
Candidate selection is done locally, so local members in a given area will choose their candidate. That's how it works in our party. It's right that when we say we believe in empowering people locally, I really believe in that. That's how we do it in our party.
And there's even more election bedlam on the way, after Chris Skidmore formally submitted his resignation earlier in protest over Rishi Sunak's oil and gas drilling plans. He was backed by fellow Tory MP and COP26 President Alok Sharma, who this morning vowed to rebel against the government's climate legislation. Party discipline leaving a lot to be desired, especially after backbencher Danny Kruger was heard saying that if they're booted out of Downing Street, they're leaving the country sadder, less united, and wait for it, less conservative than when they found it. Take my advice, don't bother sticking that on election campaign leaflets. So tonight we have to ask, is Rishi rudderless? And has he lost control of his party? Let's get the views of my top panel tonight. Daily Express columnist Carolyn Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol Malone.
Yes.
Poor old Rishi Sunak. I mean, party discipline is a thing of the past, isn't it?
It's interesting we're doing a debate I didn't know we were doing. Anyway,
Have you not been briefed?
No, not on this, no.
Yeah, but the thing about you is you are a supreme journalist.
Well,
we can throw anything at you.
So what was your question?
Oh, has Rishi Sunak lost control of his own party?
Well, I think he lost control of quite a long time ago. I mean, you know, you mentioned there that he refused to endorse Helen Harrison, who was the girlfriend partner of Peter Bone. I mean, I don't quite understand why a bloke who was elected by no one and chosen by no one can actually criticise someone who was chosen overwhelmingly by Tory party members to represent that seat.
It's a pathetic decision, though, isn't it? Because voters want change. Peter Bone is disgraced because of these allegations, which he denies.
It's a pathetic decision because it wasn't a decision that was made by Peter Bone. It was a decision made by Tory members, which is how the system works in this country. They choose someone that they want to represent a certain constituency. Now, this woman, Helen Harrison, has a record in the area. She's been a Tory councillor for many years. She's in politics already. It's 2024. Are we seriously saying that because a woman goes out with a bloke who was an MP in a certain constituency, she couldn't ever stand?
Well, she's associated with a man who's accused of quite the most outrageous behaviour.
She hasn't done it.
He's toxic, and by definition, she is too.
She's done nothing wrong. You're tarring her.
She's his other half.
Doesn't matter. She's done nothing wrong. If you suddenly went, insane tomorrow.
Well, I think that ship has
killing
passed.
people. Are we going to blame your wife for
It's been a
that?
long 3 years.
No, we're not going to blame her for that. So you can't blame Helen Harrison for whatever her partner has done.
Except that, of course, it's, you know, she's not responsible for his behaviour. Like, I always can't stand the way people blame Hillary Clinton for the things that Bill Clinton is in the news for.
Exactly.
But the difference is that Peter Bone said, if you don't select my girlfriend, then I will run against the Tories so you can't win.
Do you really
now,
think
that is
swung it?
trying to blackmail those voters.
I don't think that swung it one iota. You
Well,
can't...
then why did he bother doing it?
So are you saying that the Tory party members who voted for her were bribed by that in some way?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually have some insight to this. Tory Central Party had to put her on the shortlist because he said he'd made that threat. And so she probably wouldn't have got to go to the voters in the first place.
I don't think that they were... You know, the Tories they had an 18,000 majority, have an 18,000 majority in the seat. But the rumours are already that they're going to lose it in the election. So that kind of threat from Bone
The good news
nothing.
is she won't be the MP. It'll be a Labour MP.
Well, I don't think she should have been on the shortlist. I think it's an insult to voters. Bone has been chucked out only to be replaced by his other half. You couldn't make it up, Belinda.
I'm sorry, Mark, I agree with Carol. I think this is a formidable woman. She stood before in 2017. She's a potential MP in her own right. And I do not think partners should be responsible or accountable.
I don't think she's formidable. I think she's foolish. What is she doing with a man accused of these quite outrageous actions?
Mark, the thing is that Rishi has made a big mistake not endorsing her because he needs to be going around and thanking anyone brave enough to stand and represent the Conservative Party in the next election because many are going to face complete humiliation.
Well, that
he should be begging and thanking people for standing.
But this story is a gift for Labour supporters.
And I tell you who else it is a gift for? Reform UK as well, because the fantastic Ben Habib is standing there against Helen Harrison as well.
A vote for Reform UK is a vote for Keir Starmer.
No, a vote for Labour is a Tories is a vote for Labour.
I will be debating that with Richard Tice in just a few minutes' time.
It's not a good look if you don't understand the rules of the political game. But the rules of the political game say that Tory party members get to choose who the candidate
It looks like sleaze. I think it's a terrible look, and I think it's undemocratic, Benjamin Butterworth. To parachute in the other half of the guy that's been chucked out, you couldn't make it up.
Well, I don't know that she was parachuted in, but the fact is, I think that clearly Peter Bone was blackmailing the Tory party and has affected the decision of those votes.
There's no evidence. There's no evidence that he blackmailed the party.
And plus, he has no power.
But do you know what he is, Carol Malone? This Harrison lady, she's a Nepo baby. This is nepotism of the third degree.
Is not a Nepo baby. She's been a political person in her own right for many years.
I think it stinks.
How dare you say she's a Nepo baby? No, she isn't. She's worked for the council. She's been a Tory member of the council for years, and as Belinda just said, stood for her own seat. How dare you?
And she's the other half of the guy that's been chucked out in disgrace.
Only exist in men's orbit or not.
Well done, Carol. Exactly. Beautifully said.
OK, well, listen, I beg to differ, but this show is all about opinions. What is yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Still to come, Richard Tice was not happy with my internet-breaking monologue last night that blasted Reform UK for handing Sir Keir Starmer the keys to number 10. Reform UK project with admirable aims, goals and policies risks sweeping him to an historic landslide. Well, Richard and I will do battle. He is riled and ready for a row very shortly. You won't want to miss it. But next, in our head-to-head, disability benefits for anxiety and depression have surged up to 200-fold over the last decade. So is the serious issue of mental illness being exploited by some to game the welfare system? Entrepreneur and mentor Mike Green and TV therapist Sally Baker lock horns on that next. You're watching Mark Dolan in for Patrick Christys tonight on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. Now, I think it's disgraceful that Peter Bone, disgraced Tory MP, is to be replaced as one of the candidates in a by-election by his own girlfriend. Opinion is coming in thick and fast on email, mark@gbnews.com. Mark says, Chris, you are out of order. The members have chosen her. End of story. Linda says, I think the whole Bone thing stinks. I agree with you. And Louise, Mark, you're correct about Peter Bone's girlfriend standing as a candidate. People are judged by the company they choose. Keep those emails coming. You are watching Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Mark Dolan, with you all week. Lovely to have your company. Coming up, Reform UK leader Richard Tice takes me to task for saying a vote for his party will hand the keys of number 10 to Keir Starmer. But first, our head-to-head. Now, 2 million extra Brits are due to be claiming disability benefits by 2030, with depression and anxiety now the leading reasons for these benefits being paid. Official forecasts predict that costs will rise to £48 billion a year by the end of the decade, pushing the cost to the taxpayer up by more than 50%. Experts fear that benefit spending is rapidly running out of control, which will leave future governments struggling to fund other critical public services. This comes just months after workplace absences in Britain hit a 10-year high, with stress the leading cause of long-term sickness. Indeed, disability benefits for anxiety and depression have surged up to 200-fold over the last decade, according to official figures. So tonight I'm asking, is the serious issue of mental illness being exploited by some to game the welfare system? Let me know your thoughts, mark@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. We'll bring you the results of the poll shortly. But to debate this, going head-to-head, I'm delighted to welcome entrepreneur and mentor Mike Green. and TV therapist Sally Baker. Sally, let me start with you. Do you think the system is being gamed by people pretending to have mental health illnesses?
I don't think the system is being gamed by people pretending to have mental health issues. I think there are a lot of very, very mentally unwell people out there, and there are literally no services. There are barely any services for children. We've got something like 250,000 children on waiting lists of 6 months to see a practitioner. And once you hit 18 and you're part of the adult mental health services, whatever was available for children is halved, quartered, disappears completely for adults. We are working a threadbare system.
But Sally, why is mental health such a massive issue in the 21st century when we have, order on the streets? Nobody really goes hungry in this country. In the 1930s, the early 1940s, German bombs were raining over London and we didn't have a mental health crisis. What's changed?
We had a unified country when we faced the Germany and the war. What we've got now is we're watching a masterclass of corruption and fraud from the Tory government. So if anyone is gaming the system, it's because they've watched it for 13 years, how other people can be on the make and get away with it. But I don't
Sally,
think
are you weaponising mental health to make this political and to attack the Tories?
It's political in as much that it's not funded. Mental health services are not funded. If they're funded at all, it's much more telemetric kind of services that are available for people. I mean, waiting, if you've got a child who is no longer eating or is self-harming, showing signs of anorexia or suicidal ideation, and you're waiting up to 6 months for them to have their first appointment, that is terrifying for parents.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
OK, Sally, you raise a good point. Mike Green, your reaction to the fact that the number of people that are receiving benefits and will receive benefits due to mental health issues is skyrocketing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Mark. It is skyrocketing. And, how can we say that nobody is defraudulent? All sorts of reports and studies have shown that at least 8 to 10% of the people are defrauding the benefit system. So it's definitely happening. I mean, to me, I look at the fact that, it's doubled in the last 10 years. It's going to go up by 50% in the next 10 years. But more importantly, nobody would deny or deprive genuinely ill people from the care they need and the support they need. The problem is that we're grouping and encapsulating serious disabilities in with anxiety, stress. They might be temporary issues, they're not long-term, and many of them are lifestyle affected. More than 50%, if you look at all the figures and go into the things that are labelled as disabled, from arthritis, back pain, chronic heart failure, COPD, epilepsy, and so on. Some of them are really serious issues. Many of them are affected by smoking, drinking, obesity. These are self-inflicted. At what point should people take self-responsibility for their own health, mental or physical, that is becoming a drain on the country that is not affordable? As I said, nobody wants to deprive those really in need, but it is not affordable, and it is so loose and easy for anyone to claim if they just claim some stress or anxiety these days.
Well, that's right. I mean, you don't have to prove stress or anxiety, do you, Sally? You do have to prove arthritis or a broken leg.
I think the whole idea that we've got so many people now using food banks, I mean, the bedrock of sound, resilient mental health is good housing, good quality housing, a roof over your head, good nutritious food on the table, enough money to heat your house. All of these things are under pressure now. People are really struggling with the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, what Liz Truss did with mortgages. These are, the majority of benefits go to working people. And when you look at the 24 million people who are claiming some level of disability allowance or other associated benefits, 12 million of those are pensioners. So, you can tar people, but actually this is systematic now within the system.
Sally, I take very seriously major mental health issues. If somebody wants to take their own life. We know about the worrying spectre of male suicide. And if you need treatment, you absolutely should have it. And I agree with you, it's not sufficiently funded. But I think what Mike's saying, and my concern, is how this can be manipulated by work-shy layabouts who will just say, oh, I've got stress, and they get a month off work. Or, worst-case scenario, the government will be paying for them.
So many people are working on what are now called casual contracts, used to be called zero-hour contracts. Many people are terrified about losing their jobs and won't be going sick even when they feel terrible.
Unless they work in the public sector.
I don't know about the public sector. I mean, you can get some time off work. You're going to go back through, the intake process of wherever you work. But if there are people gaming the system, they are the minority. The majority of people...
How can you say that, Sally? Where's the proof? How can you say they're a minority?
The figures have been going up for mental health over the last 13 years. The services, the availability of services have been decreasing. This is a gradual, growing problem.
But Sally, how are you going to fund this? Because I think we can all agree we're not able to raise taxes anymore because that kills economic growth, and they're at the highest level since the war. We can't borrow any more money because the debt is £2.6 trillion. So which other department would you take this mental health investment from? Does it go off defence? Does it go off schools? Does it go off the NHS? Police?
We've got 7.8 million people on waiting lists on the NHS now for surgeries, treatments. Their mental health is hugely affected by chronic back pain, stress. You can call it stress and you think, oh, well, it's nothing. Debilitating stress where you can't get up in the morning, you can't leave the house, agoraphobia, all of those things. They're major issues for people that they're living with, and they're completely unsupported. They're not being able to access even a GP, never alone a mental health professional.
Mike, what would you say? You've run many successful businesses. If a colleague of yours, one of your employees, said, I need a month off because I've got stress, what would your reaction be?
Well, as you said, I mentor a lot of businesses, and I agree with Sally on so much about the people that are genuinely debilitated by this. But I think so many people are just exploiting the fact that I could claim stress, I could have millions in the bank, this is not means tested, and I could immediately access PIP, personal independence payments of 170 or whatever the number is at the moment about. I can access that irrespective of the money I have. Now, when it comes to business, everyone talks about the big businesses, the Unilevers, the BPs, the Tescos, but 99.2% of businesses, 5.5 million businesses in the UK, have less than 50 employees, many less than 10. They are literally disabled by so many people exploiting the ease at which they can go off work and claim benefits, rather than accepting that we need to be a bit tougher in the process that defines what is disability and who should qualify, and a means testing to say, should they get it?
Okay.
We can't just keep throwing money out. It's another £20 billion on where it was 10 years ago. It's predicted to grow by 17 billion more pounds a year in the next 7 years. We're going to get to a point eventually at this rate where more people will be taking than will be contributing. However we look at the problem, it is not sustainable.
All right. OK, Mike, briefly, last word, Sally.
Mental health has always been the most underfunded of all of the NHS services. It is now on the floor. We really need to fund it properly. This is not about more disclosure, more discussion about mental health. This is about services that are required now.
Sally, a real treat to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up again soon. Sally Baker is a TV therapist and good friend of GB News entrepreneur and mentor Mike Green. OK, who do you agree with? 2 million more people will be claiming disability benefits by 2030. And the issue of mental illness is front and centre of that. Is it being gamed in terms of the welfare system? Marty on Twitter says, if people are lying about it, I hope they feel guilty. I hope people who are actually ill won't be punished. Susie says, I actually know someone who's doing this. It makes my blood boil. Sandra, I think there should be random spot checks for people claiming these benefits. If you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't mind. Well, your verdict is in. You've been voting in the text poll. 89% say that, yes, people are exploiting mental health services. 11% say they are not. Coming up, as the country continues to reel from the Post Office scandal and evidence emerges that former Minister for Postal Affairs, Sir Ed Davey, dismissed and ignored pleas for help from campaigning sub-postmasters, should the Lib Dem leader resign? Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie has been frothing at the mouth on that one. He's going to let rip shortly live in the studio. Plus, we'll talk about Joey Barton. But first, someone else who's not happy at the moment, not happy with me, is Reform UK leader Richard Tice. I'm his #1 target. Reform UK project with admirable aims, goals and policies risks sweeping him to an historic landslide. Yes, it's Tice versus Dolan next. You're watching Mark Dolan in for Patrick Christys on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Coming up in the Royal Dispatch, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier tackle allegations of Prince Andrew's sex tapes taken by Jeffrey Epstein. Plus, I'll be asking, do you think that Prince Andrew should remarry Sarah Ferguson to rescue his reputation? We'll discuss that shortly, but first, Richard Tice, now last night on GB News. We always set the agenda, and take a listen to my big opinion. Really loves Labour or has much enthusiasm for the cause, and I've never met a Keir Starmer fan. But the entire Reform UK project, with admirable aims, goals and policies, risks sweeping him to an historic landslide. Yes, that's what I said. It broke the internet. For me, a step for Reform UK is a step to Farage, because it does guarantee Labour 5 years. But Reform leader Richard Tice didn't agree. He hit back on Twitter, and he said, "Dear Mark," because he's always very polite, "you admit the Tories are toxic and dreadful, yet you seem to want to stifle democracy by preventing millions of people from saying they want an alternative, they want Reform UK. Both Labour and Tories, two sides of the same socialist coin. Only reform can save Britain," says Richard Tice. Well, he's with me in the studio. Hello, Richard.
Very good evening, Mark. Now, listen, you're behind the times, my friend. Richard Littlejohn in the Daily Mail, I think we may have it on the screen, last Friday, he quite rightly put up the headline, "Maybe the Tories should stand down in favour of Reform UK, because head-to-head, I beat Keir Starmer any day of the week." But you're thinking old school, Mark. What's going on here? Why are you trying to perpetuate failure? You have to punish incompetence and failure. If you do a bad job presenting, you get fired.
Most definitely.
It's even more important that if someone does a bad job running the country, breaking the country, we, the voters, have got to fire them. Now, what I'm saying to the country is, look, both main parties are woeful. They're two forms of socialism.
For sure.
The Tories have broken it. Labour will bankrupt it. It's a catastrophe. The country needs to wake up and vote reform. What you're suggesting is that, no, we'll let the dreadful toxic situation permeate and perpetuate because I'm happy for people to vote out of fear. What a dreadful way to run a democracy.
I live in the real world. We have a very rigged electoral system. I know you'll agree with that. First past the post, which favours...
You agree with me we should have proportional representation.
Well, there's a degree of common ground there. Plus, I like your policies, and I think you'd make a great Prime Minister. But the problem is, in a year's time, that ain't going to happen, OK? Your other half will not be...
It would if Littlejohn was right, because we gave the Tories a chance.
I don't know what taste your missus has in curtains for number 10, but she won't be going down to John Lewis's haberdashery department because of first past the post. It's Labour or Tory, right? So that means...
So you're saying we stand down, so millions of people are not allowed to express an opinion.
Here's your dilemma. And
you perpetuate failure,
Here's the thing that ought to keep R. Tice, Esquire, awake at night, right? And it's not Mrs. Tice. What you need to think about is it's Starmer versus Sunak. And you know as well as I do that Starmer is a million times worse.
Look, Sunak has failed. The Tories are finished.
You can't address that point? Starmer is a million times worse.
What I'm addressing is that Starmageddon would be an equal catastrophe for the country as Sunak's Tories regime has been. And the country needs to wake up and realise that both of them will represent no growth and we are going to start to run out of money. And look, Starmageddon is bad. Sunak is bad. You can't trust a word these people say. The country needs change. You've got to give country... Democracy works when people have different choices. You believe in competition. You're of a conservative philosophy. Why are you trying to prevent competition by preventing reform from standing, Mark?
Because I'm a realist. So if I could press a button and have Reform UK as perhaps the dominant right voice in the country, I would. But what you're asking Britain to go through is 5 years of Keir Starmer as Prime Minister in order to achieve that. But here's what I'm worried about.
You don't believe in democracy. You're admitting you don't believe in democracy.
Well, of course I do, and my viewers
then
and
let
listeners...
me stand.
I've got no doubt... And of course you must stand. But I'm saying to my viewers and listeners, I'm worried about the consequences of a vote for Reform UK at the moment, because the issue we have is that you're gambling, or you're putting the house on the Tories collapsing in a year's time, which they may, so that Reform can either then infiltrate the Tories and make them properly Conservative,
we replace them.
All right, OK, so that's replace.
But I can't replace them if you don't let me stand.
But what may happen in between is 5 years of a Starmer government, potentially a 150-seat majority for Keir Starmer. He could drastically and permanently change the country in that time. 5 years to finish off Britain.
The Tories have had an 80-seat majority and they've broken Britain. And the country needs to wake up and realise they're both forms of socialism, and if we don't change course, and if people don't vote for reform, we're in deep trouble.
Now, you're a brave man, a bold man, a man of vision and integrity. Of course you are. But what you're risking is a decade of Labour in power.
No, what you're risking is...
When we meet in 10 years' time, we've hopefully both still got our hair. What will you say to me if in 10 years' time we've still got Labour in power? Will you apologise?
No, listen, we won't have. The country will have come to its senses. What you're suggesting...
And you think 5 years, is that a price worth paying? 5 years of Labour?
Look,
5 years of £28 billion a year on flaky renewables. That's what your mate Starmer's going to do.
You do realise under the Tories...
He's going to make it illegal.
The deficit this year is going to be 150 billion quid. This year, under the Tories, no growth at all. The country, we're actually declining. Our economy is falling. Highest tax vote. and mass immigration. Who voted for mass immigration? The Tories lied, they betrayed the principles, and they've got to be punished.
But I'm really nervous about a Labour government, and you're going to usher them in. They want to make it illegal to misgender someone. A Prime Minister who campaigned to reverse Brexit. He doesn't know what a woman is. Folding to the unions. Wokery in our institutions. You're guaranteeing 5 years of misery for my viewers and listeners.
You're agreeing with me that it would be a disaster and that actually the Tories, they've had their chance. We stood down for them in 2019. They've messed up. They've completely fouled up. It's time for them to do the decent thing. On behalf of the country, they should stand down. As Richard Littlejohn said, let me take on Keir Starmer. We win hands down.
So, do you accept that a Labour government is coming, and is that a price worth paying for your political revolution?
We're standing everywhere so that everybody has the choice to say, actually, only Reform UK can save Britain. That's how democracy works.
I think you're going to do very well next year. And a big part of me would like to see...
We are going up. Here's the thing. There's a hidden reform vote, a bit like the shy Brexiteers who didn't dare admit, don't tell anyone, I voted Brexit. And it's the same with reform.
17.6 million people.
We've got Tory councillors phoning us up saying, don't tell anyone, I'm going to vote Tory.
I mean, listen, I've been given a very red bottom by my viewers and listeners after last night's Take at 10. They're furious with me.
So.
Because they're big fans of yours, OK? But what is a good outcome in a year's time, then? You won't get any MPs, will you?
Oh, you're so negative. I want people to vote positively, not out of fear.
How many MPs then? How many? What's the projection?
I want millions
10,
of people.
15?
I want millions of people to vote reform, and I want proportional representation, and I want to save Britain. We're in deep trouble, whether it's the con-socialism of the Tories or the red socialism of Labour. This country's in trouble. It needs change.
If you rout the Tories next year, which is your plan, would you do a deal with a future Conservative leader? Might you take over the Conservative Party or your pal Nigel?
I want to focus on what our policies, how we're going to save...
Never say never?
Look, you should never say never.
Oh, hello.
You should never say never, but here's the point.
Matthew, there's your newsline. Get that on Twitter.
The Tories have failed. They need to be punished. They need to be ousted. They need to be replaced.
I tell you something, we've got a story there. Richard Tice not ruling out that he might take over the Conservative Party after they are eviscerated at the next general election. I tell you one thing...
That wasn't really the question. What I was saying is...
So do you know that? Are you saying never?
No, what we're saying is
Keep digging, Richard.
They need to be punished.
Here's a spade.
They need to be punished, and we're the people to punish them.
Listen, good friend of mine. Always a treat to have you on, and I've got to say, you've put me in my place. I enjoyed that debate. Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.com. Notwithstanding my Take at 10 last night, which, of course, I stand by, I will confirm that both Richard Tice and Reform UK are a formidable political force, and they are growing. Richard, thank you so much. Lots more to get through, folks. Don't forget the email is mark@gbnews.com. Looking forward to having a right old ding-dong with Kelvin McKenzie. But coming up next at 10 o'clock in my monologue, as Sadiq Khan bows to the trade unions by offering a hefty pay deal, is Boris Johnson right that the capitulation gives us, quote, a foretaste of life under a Labour government? Next up, the full extent of the Horizon Post Office scandal has gripped the nation, not least the role played by Sir Ed Davey during his time in government.
I wish I'd known then what we all know now. The Post Office was lying on an industrial scale to me and other ministers.
So, is it time for the Lib Dem leader to resign? Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie takes on the man who wants to be Prime Minister next. Also, he'll be discussing Joey Barton's social media meltdown as well. Is there double standards at play in terms of how Joey Barton is being treated? And Gary Lineker? I'll be asking Kelvin next. This is Mark Dolan tonight, in for Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. You're watching Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Mark Dolan, only on GB News. Now, more shocking details have continued to emerge about the post office scandal, which saw hundreds of innocent sub-postmasters hounded for crimes they never committed in what could be the greatest miscarriage of justice in British history. And the spotlight is turned to the actions, or rather inaction, of Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey, who was Postal Affairs Minister from 2010 to 2012 and who dismissed the pleas for help from campaigning sub-postmasters like Alan Bates. Davey was out defending himself today, claiming he was lied to. Take a listen.
I wish I'd known then what we all know now. The post office was lying on an industrial scale to me and other ministers. And when I met Alan Bates and listened to his concerns, I put those concerns to the officials in my department, to the post office, to the National Federation of Postmasters. And it's clear they all were lying to me.
With me in the studio is the former editor of The Sun, Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie. Kelvin, should he go?
Yes, I absolutely think he should go. And that defence, though, was appalling, really. Your job, you are the minister. People are lying to you left, right and centre. Your colleagues are lying to you, the Prime Minister's lying to you, regulators are lying to you, big companies that you're doing deals with are lying to you. Your job is to work out, actually, is there another truth in all this? And when you meet somebody like Alan Bates, a quiet but a man concentrating on the detail, you would have always said to him, there might be something in all this. However, he's not the only idiot in all this. I have never, ever, ever seen a scandal where so many people come out badly. Starmer emerges badly. He was the DP.
You've been tweeting about this, haven't you?
The DPP.
What could he have done, Kelvin?
The DPP can overrule the post office, right, in terms of of whether people are being charged or not. So the idea that this has nothing to do with me, that is crap. Actually, people like David Cameron come out poorly. After all, he was running the coalition that appointed that man, Sir Ed Davey. I've learned.
Let's keep ourselves on air.
Yeah.
I've got bills to pay, Kelvin.
Well, I've heard about those, by the way, and they've given you 30 days, and that's your lot. So, anyway, the bottom line on it is everybody emerges very poorly in all this. And actually, the media emerged poorly.
Yeah.
OK, so where was the Sun every day doing the big expose, the big expose, the big expose. What we had to do is sit there and watch a docudrama which uniquely didn't have to over-egg the pudding, because actually the stories were so upsetting and the scandal was so bad that, in fact, all they had to do was report it. I have never seen that before. And I really salute ITV. Normally, anything to do with ITV, if Holly Willoughby didn't turn up on it, then you weren't watching ITV, were you? Right? This time, there was actually some proper journalism meets drama. It's fantastic, and I love the reaction of the normal people. They've seen this, and they know that this might represent a whole load of other things that are going on in their lives.
Most definitely.
And I'm so pleased for it. And the other person to give a big tick to is Richard Branson, right? Who's now given a free holiday to Mr. Bates, who asked whether he could have one in an interview with the Sunday Times. And Richard Branson's come on and said, yeah, be my guest. And by the way, take the free flight, upper class, and come and stay in Necker Island. Honestly, a fantastic coming together over this story. I have never seen journalism like it.
Most definitely. Joey Barton will not be silenced, Kelvin, after the ex-footballer faced an almighty backlash for comparing ITV pundits Eni Aluko and Lucy Ward to serial killers Fred and Rose West. Well, today he's suggested he was duty-bound to speak out, writing, "I've got a great-grandfather who was gassed at Ypres in 1915. He says, I'm doing it for him." It's a long tweet. There isn't time for all of it. But I just wonder, are there double standards at play in terms of the way that he's being handled versus Gary Lineker? I mean, it's just another outspoken sportsman, but Joey Barton seems to have the wrong opinions.
Well, it's certainly true. I mean, I'm in favour of free speech. And Mr. Barton is entitled to have a view, and he will now pay the consequences of having that view.
Unlike Mr. Lineker.
Unlike, Mr. Lineker, who, when he has a view, the Director General, who seems to be a supine, rather strange character, says, do you know, that's shocking, we're going to do that again, and we're going to, and nothing ever happens. Yeah. So we all want to be Gary Lineker, actually. We want to be able to say what we like, trouser $1.5 million a year, and that's fine. Now, take the other chap. Funnily enough, I agree with some of the aspects about women pundits, right? I like them in tennis, I like them in golf, I don't like them in football, right? OK, that's my view.
And you're the founder of Talk Sport, and you've put plenty of brilliant female broadcasters on air.
Yeah, and
but as female pundits on the Premier League, no for you?
It doesn't seem to work for me. Now, and a lot of my mates, it doesn't work for them, but there is a bigger problem at play here. If a major TV network didn't carry the women, right, the women would start giving interviews saying that they're misogynists, and then the advertisers, Unilever and people with anything which might be aimed towards a female area, would then say, we can't advertise. So it's all commercial, I'm afraid. But as for the other chap, yeah, his views are way over the top in some areas. I agree with him in the other. He's entitled to it, but there will be a consequence. And I suspect the consequence is that he won't be working in football anytime soon.
Briefly, Kelvin, you've had lots of talent at Talk Sport. If he was on the roster as a presenter, would you have fired him by now?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. However, if the advertisers all came to me and said, you know, we're moving it out, then that might be a different conversation. But I would hope that I wouldn't do that.
No, because you've got a backbone and balls. Kelvin, catch you in a week's time. The brilliant Kelvin McKenzie. OK, speaking last week, a Liberal Democrat spokesman said Ed bitterly regrets that the Post Office were not honest with him at the time. His heart goes out to the families caught up in this miscarriage of justice. He'll fully cooperate with the inquiry to get to the bottom of what went wrong. A spokesperson for Fujitsu, the company behind the faulty Horizon system, said the current Post Office Horizon IT statutory inquiry is examining complex events stretching back over 20 years. The inquiry has reinforced the devastating impact on postmasters' lives and that of their families, and Fujitsu has apologised for its role in their suffering. Coming up, Prince Andrew has endured a torrid couple of years, but will his troubles be over if he reties the knot with ex-wife Sarah Ferguson? Top royal commentators Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier cover all of that drama and much more in our Royal Dispatch shortly. What do you think about that? Would it solve Prince Andrew's problems to remarry Sarah Ferguson? Mark at gbnews.com. We'll debate that at 10. But next up, after Boris Johnson warned about union chaos under Labour, I take on Starmer and his socialist cabal, and that's next. You won't want to miss it. You're watching Mark Dolan in for Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
That warm feeling inside from boxed boilers. sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Temperatures tumbling once more out there tonight. It's going to be a bit icy as well. We have seen a few snow flurries across parts of the south. High pressure is in control, keeping things pretty dry for most of this week. But with the easterly breeze, we have seen a few showers across the south. As I said, some sleet and snow mixed in. No huge amounts, but nevertheless, you can see a covering in places. And wherever we've got showers, could be icy. So we do have a Met Office ice warning in place across the south for those slippery conditions into the early hours. Further north, some stubborn fog patches across northern Scotland, and many places dipping to or below freezing. Parts of the east may just stay above freezing, where we keep a bit more cloud. And some will start a bit grey on Tuesday, quite cloudy over northeast England, southeast Scotland. Any early showers over the southwest should scoot away. And for many, it's a bright day tomorrow, bright, fine winter's day. Feeling chilly, temperatures starting off around freezing and only getting up to 3 or 4 degrees. Feeling colder with the wind across the south, particularly if you're stuck under that cloud across northeastern parts of England. A bit more cloud coming into northeastern areas by Wednesday, and a few more showers likely, although these expected to be chiefly of rain, maybe some sleet and snow on hills. A sunny day generally across the south and many western coast. And again, fine and sunny through Wednesday, thanks to that area of high pressure. Temperatures just creeping up a touch, but still below average. And of course, it will feel colder once more in the wind.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Mark Dolan, with you all week. Great to have your company. Labour look odds-on to win the next election, but does that mean that union barons will be tightening their stranglehold on Britain? Boris Johnson certainly thinks so, and I'll give my take next, and I'm not pulling my punches. Plus, things keep getting worse for the Playboy Prince. Yes, Prince Andrew is battling a seemingly endless stream of salacious allegations. So is remarrying Fergie the answer to his problems? And more humiliation for the other royal outcasts.
Terry called Herford and asked her for money.
Lady C and Phil D get stuck into that in the Royal Dispatch. We'll also take a look at tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press in the most entertaining paper review on the telly with my press pack. Tonight, Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda de Lucy. A packed hour, let's get to work. So will Labour bow down to the unions and bring us 5 years of strike chaos? Email me, mark@gbnews.com. I'll be dealing with Keir Starmer in no uncertain terms after the news headlines and Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. Well, let's start with a little bit of breaking news concerning that aircraft that blew out mid-air. There have been investigations in the United States, and one airline which grounded its fleet, United, has confirmed this evening that it has found loose bolts during inspections of its Boeing 737 MAX 9 fleet. So that's the same aircraft forced to make an emergency landing after the door blew out. Airlines across the globe grounded their MAX 9 fleets in the wake of that incident. The door, which blew off an Alaska Airlines plane mid-flight, was found in a residential back garden. United aren't confirming at this stage how many of its planes had those loose bolts, but that news just into us, that loose bolts are confirmed on the Boeing 737 Fleet 9. MAX 9 fleet, I should say. Now, another news today. The Post Office Minister says securing justice for victims of the Horizon IT scandal and making sure such a tragedy never happens again is his highest priority. At the time, the former Post Office boss, Paula Venables, denied there were problems with the Horizon IT system, which showed money was missing from Post Office branches at reckoning up time, implying theft. As a result, hundreds of postmasters and mistresses were convicted, jailed, bankrupted, and some even took their own lives. Now there are calls for Miss Venables to be stripped of her CBE, and Kelvin McKenzie has this evening said it's perfectly reasonable for people to suggest an idea supported by the Prime Minister. Mr McKenzie said he'll update the House about the government's plans to help those affected by the end of this week. Now, the offshore petroleum licensing bill will return to the Commons within the next 2 weeks. The government's Deputy Chief Whip announced in the Commons that the second reading wouldn't be taking place anymore this evening. If it passes, the legislation will be mandated for licences for oil and gas projects in the North Sea to be awarded annually. It's already led to the resignation of the Tory MP Chris Skidmore, who says the law would now show the UK is rowing ever further back from its climate commitments. And a lot more snow and sleet is on the way this evening, with ice warnings issued for southern England and Wales. The Met Office has issued yellow alerts effective until tomorrow morning, and an amber cold health alert has also been issued for parts of England, triggering responses to assist older people or those with cardiovascular or respiratory conditions. The cold snap set to continue for the rest of this week as well. And today, Sir Keir Starmer visited flood-hit areas in the East Midlands, promising that a Labour government would do more to protect people's homes. That's after Labour accused the government of being asleep at the wheel over flood warnings, of which 160 remain in place after thousands of homes were flooded. Rishi Sunak says the government has invested £5.2 billion in flood defences. Now, 2 sporting legends passed away today. First of all, the former Wales and Irish Lions full-back JPR Williams has died at the age of 74. JPR winning 55 caps for Wales. His former club, Briton, made the announcement, saying Briton Ravens are devastated to announce the passing of JPR Williams, one of Briton's most decorated players and an icon of world rugby. And the former England captain, Will Carling, said he was really sorry to hear about the death of one of his heroes when he was growing up. What a hero, he said. What a warrior. And tributes have been pouring in for the German football legend Franz Beckenbauer, who's died at the age of 78. Bayern and Germany striker Thomas Müller called him one of the greatest footballers in the club's history. Beckenbauer captaining Germany to World Cup victory in 1974, then winning the tournament once again as a manager in 1990. He was nicknamed the Kaiser, and he helped guide Bayern Munich to 3 successive European Cups, his family saying he died peacefully in his sleep. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker. This is Britain's News Channel.
Thanks, Polly. Good evening. Socialist London is a good preview of what the next 5 years will be like under Labour. Expensive but often unused cycle lanes, perfectly good cars banned by scientifically debatable clean air rules, a soft touch on violence and muggings leading to a knife crime epidemic, and the trade unions in charge. London's divisive mayor, who offended generations of working-class Londoners last year by saying it was immigrants who built the capital, and who notoriously put his own name up in lights during the New Year's Eve fireworks celebrations, has caved in to Mick Lynch and the RMT union's demands by offering a bumper pay rise of millions for the already healthily remunerated tube drivers. All of this to avoid strike chaos. Boris Johnson, who took a break from making £27 million a second doing public speaking, said this is a foretaste of what the country could expect under Labour, and who could disagree with old Bojo? Should Starmer get in, which looks like a racing certainty now, there will be more strikes, not fewer, as the public sector will expect a cash windfall from an incoming Labour government. And how can Starmer possibly stand up to the unions when they bankroll his own party? Talking about the deal that he just struck in the last 24 hours, Sadiq Khan said this is what can be achieved by engaging and working with trade unions. Do me a favour, this is what can be achieved by giving in to their demands. And if that happens at a national level under Prime Minister Starmer, you and I will be paying for these inflation-busting deals as well as future generations, because don't forget, it's all borrowed cash. Now, I'm old enough to remember the strike chaos of the early 1980s, and I do not want to go back there. It's been bad enough under the Tories, but at least they've stood their ground against the junior doctors, who are pleading poverty and are willing to risk lives and patient care to get what they want. Now, these junior doctors do a fabulous job. We're all grateful. It's long hours, it's very hard work. But underpaid is stretching it. As the brilliant Ross Clark points out in the Sun newspaper, in the year to June 2023, a junior doctor in the first year of training earned a mean basic pay of over £28,000 for a 40-hour week. Now, when you add £8,000 of extra payments for shift working and better wages in big cities, they were earning almost £37,000. And that is in their first year, when the doctors are still being trained. That's when they're students. Second year, it's an average of 43k, then 47k. And once they're consultants, they're looking at an average salary of almost £130,000. Nice work if you can get it. So when I say that there will be a Labour government next year, that's not, strictly speaking, correct, because it's Mick Lynch and the other union barons that will be running Britain. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. Responding to that is my top panel tonight. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol, 5 years of strike chaos, guaranteed if Labour get in.
Oh, I mean, I think it's completely true, you know. And you're talking about Khan there. This man's a buffoon. He couldn't run a you-know-what in a brewery, let alone a capital city. You know, London has, TfL has had £6 billion in bailouts since 2020. In August 22, it got £3.6 billion. That was supposed to make it do till the end of 2024. This guy is just hemorrhaging money, and he's just caved in to Lynch. He's not said where this money is coming from, how it's going to be paid, but you can guarantee it's going to come from Londoners, who he uses as walking cash machines. This guy, this is the man who said there'd be no strikes on his watch. He's presided over 140 strikes with TfL. He can't control them. You know, to cave into the unions this way, an average... The tube driver, the average salary for a tube driver is 65 grand a year. These are not people on the bones of their backside. These are people who are using Connie. He talked about the government taking an adversarial approach towards the unions. Well, it's better than taking a crawling on your belly approach to the unions by just giving in and giving them...
It should be a confrontation. It should be a battle. That's the government's job.
It's called negotiation. And the government have offered these drivers... There's been lots of offers over the past 6 months, and they've not most of them back. And you know, they just want what they want. And this is exactly how it'll be when Labour get into power. All the money is going to be spent on the public services, and everyone else will get nothing. And it'll be Londoners, it'll be the rest of the people in the country who are paying for what happens.
Most definitely. Benjamin, 5 years of union chaos under Labour.
I mean, look, if you look at historically, strike days are always considerably lower under Labour governments than
because they capitulate.
Get what they want. And we have just had years of strikes because people have been on the most incredible low pay. The idea of
the government have stood their ground on the nurses, standing their ground on the junior doctors. Keir Starmer won't do that because the unions are bankrolling his own party.
Low pay is not 63 grand a year, Ben.
No, it's not. But the fact is that across the board, TfL, they were offered 5%, which was below inflation pay rise.
Well, it's not below inflation now, is it?
It's not, but it was at the time it was given in 2023, and that's what the strike is over. So these people were getting below what the private sector was getting on average.
So they're striking retrospectively. You're talking nonsense. They're striking retrospectively.
If you have your way, Benjamin Butterworth, if you have your way, OK, if you're a Labour government, Mick Lynch will be Prime Minister, not Keir Starmer.
God, you do talk some codswallop. I mean,
well, he's already beaten the mayor, the Labour mayor. He's going to beat the Labour Prime Minister.
RMT, which is what Mick Lynch runs, has never been affiliated to the Labour Party. Mick Lynch does not vote Labour. It is not affiliated to Labour. He is a self-described communist. So the idea they have a link, they don't fund the Labour Party. It is complete nonsense what you have just
Labour
said.
need to keep the RMT happy and their members.
No, they don't. There's no link.
Because that is Labour's
There is no formal link between the Labour Party and the RMT. And the RMT only really has considerable power in London.
Are you telling me there will be fewer strikes if Labour gets in?
Yes, absolutely.
What have you been drinking?
Absolutely.
I think there will be, because they're going to get what they want.
But
there
the
will
fact
be
is
fewer
that,
strikes.
you know, you've got a situation here where the economy was going to lose, London's economy was going to lose £50 million from these strikes, and we managed to fix that by finding the money so there isn't strikes.
Well, hang on a minute.
What on earth is the problem?
There's no money to be found.
You want working people to be poorer so that you can peddle your ideas. The Tory party is funded by big billionaire
would you like to know?
And I tell you what, I'd rather that trade unions were in charge than them.
Would you like to know what I want? I want low inflation so that my listeners and my viewers, the money they make every week actually is worth something. And if you give in to these inflation-busting pay rises, you will see inflation come back with a vengeance.
So to clarify,
higher prices.
You think we have high inflation because of workers' pay in the last couple of years?
Yes, because that's what happens when you have inflation-busting pay rises. It sparks inflation.
Mate, only
you
one
cannot have an arms race.
And it's clearly not you.
Well, LSE, lefty think tank.
Benjamin, you cannot sell this as a win for Sadiq Khan. He completely and utterly caving into train drivers who, press the green button for go and red button to stop.
Linda, can you give me the national perspective? I've got viewers and listeners in Manchester, in Cardiff, in Belfast, in Edinburgh. Why does this story matter to them?
I think it matters to them so much. I actually agree with Carol. I think there'll be less strikes under Labour because they're going to cave in to all their demands. Because the message that Khan is sending out is hold us to ransom and we'll cave in. So what's stopping them from asking for 80 grand next year if he knows Khan is just going to cave in?
DeLucy, you've got to ask Butterworth a question, which is where is this money for pay rises going to come from?
And why isn't it going on the police, which London needs far more?
So what are you going to do? Which department will you take the money out of to give to train drivers and everyone else that wants more money?
Well, that money isn't coming from central government.
No straight answer.
It wouldn't be a Labour government.
This money has come that has bailed Khan out this year, has come from the Department of Transport.
And can I just point out...
That is central government.
Get your facts right, Benjamin.
Well, let me tell you a fact. First of all, you said that junior doctors work 40 hours, which is wrong. Their contracts are for 48 hours.
And they get overtime.
No, that's their basic is 40 hours. Those are the figures I quoted.
Wrong.
Plus shifts.
They're not wrong. In fact, your figures were conservative because in the third year they get between 50 and 60 grand. And what you're not including in any of that is the 20% pension they get.
Yeah.
£2 of every £10 they pay the pension.
And the cost of their education for the taxpayer.
And just to point out, when Boris Johnson finished being Mayor of London, the Conservative Chancellor removed the £1 billion a year subsidy that central government gave to Transport for London.
And he's had £6 billion since 2020.
I'm just pointing out that they removed the money that central government gives to Transport for London when Sadiq Khan became Mayor, which completely changed the maths.
And
it is
he's had
politicking.
£6 billion in bailout since 2020. So that billion doesn't count because in 3 years...
$1 billion a year?
In 6 billion.
OK, there you go. They are throwing figures around.
And COVID.
He's been bailed out.
It's all funny you mentioned COVID because Mayor Khan begged the government to put London into lockdown. The capital.
On a Shakespearean
There you go.
level.
Capital city still paying the price. Folks, it's all kicked off. Your reaction, Mark at GBNews.com. Still to come, tonight's passionate panel. Join me to run through the first of tomorrow's front pages, some cracking stories in the papers, in what is the liveliest paper review on British TV. But next, would Prince Andrew find a solution to his problems by remarrying his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson? And also, do those gags about Harry and Meghan at last night's Golden Globes, do they prove that Sussexes have finally lost Hollywood?
Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just...
Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier beam in to offer their unique analysis in tonight's Royal Dispatch. But what do you think about that tantalising question? Should Prince Andrew remarry Sarah Ferguson to rescue his reputation? Would you watch the wedding on telly? Where would it happen? Probably at Wetherspoons, wouldn't it? We'll discuss that very shortly. You're watching Patrick Christys tonight with me, Mark Dolan, only on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the show. More newspaper front pages coming up. But time now for the Royal Dispatch with Lady C and Phil Dampier. Now, should we talk about Prince Andrew? It would be rude not to. He's been all but banished from public life, and his brother, the King, is now being urged to give him the final chop by kicking him out of his Royal Lodge residency in Windsor Park. But despite all his tribulations off the back of his disastrous friendship with paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, the Duke of York is now being mooted to rekindle an old flame by sensationally remarrying ex-wife Sarah Ferguson in a bid to salvage his tattered reputation. Former royal correspondent and good friend of the show, Michael Cole, wrote in the Daily Express it would be the most significant step towards restoring his reputation and finding a way back to public life, which he desperately wants. Well, there you go. What a tantalising thought. Should Andrew remarry Sarah Ferguson? Lady C, is that the idea? Would that save him?
Well, I don't know that it would save him, but I think it's a very good idea. The fact of the matter is they never really wanted to get divorced in the first place. They were more or less bounced into a divorce, not the separation, but the divorce. Although she was bounced into the separation. And I think it would actually be a very good thing if they remarried. I don't know to what extent it would save him, but I think it would certainly be a very positive step for him personally, and it would tick a lot of boxes.
Indeed. Lady C, you've always got your finger on the pulse. They cohabit, don't they, in the Royal Lodge, more or less. Do you think they're already friends with benefits?
Well, Mark, let's stick to the drawing room and not stray into horizontal quarters, shall we?
Lady C, you're not getting shy on me, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm simply drawing a veil over things that I think are indecorous to address.
Well, sometimes silence is deafening. What do you think about this story? Because in PR terms, Phil Dampier, this would be ideal for Prince Andrew, wouldn't it? I mean, we'd all be watching the wedding.
Yeah, good evening, Mark. Well, believe it or not, and I know I don't look old enough, my first job was in 1986, was covering their wedding in Westminster Abbey, so it really would be going full circle if they got married for the second time. But I have to say, I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, to answer your earlier question to Lady C, they are best friends. They have lived under the same roof for many, many years, but they're not romantically involved. And I just can't see it happening. I mean, I think they've been very supportive to each other, obviously through her recent breast cancer ordeal, and obviously we all know what he's been through. I thought at Christmas he looked overweight. He was in this video that one member of the public shot, and he looked very, very sort of downbeat. I think he's almost verging on being clinically depressed. I can't see what he's going to be doing in the near future, but certainly these latest revelations that we've had from the Epstein files aren't going to help. And I just don't see him coming back. But certainly marrying her, it was suggested by Michael Cole. I love Michael Cole, but I think the idea that that would help him shows how low he's sunk.
However, Phil, I mean, it is kitchen sink time for Prince Andrew, and Sarah Ferguson and Andrew have an electric chemistry, and she's been incredibly loyal to him. I mean, she's about his only cheerleader aside from his daughters.
It's suited her to hang on to his coattails over the years, to be honest. I mean, she's had a roof over her head. She's been able to do, her work and go off and do her thing. He of course, was gallivanting around the world, enjoying himself, and of course, that's all come home to roost. So I think it was a mutually beneficial situation for them. But yeah. I can't see them getting remarried. It's just not.
No, and also, Lady C, it's worth pointing out, Prince Andrew, he's a bit of an old slapper, isn't he? I'm not sure that Sarah Ferguson would want him back.
I'm not quite sure what an old slapper is. I'm sorry.
I think he's got. I think he's what Hillary Clinton would describe as a dog that's hard to keep on the porch.
Oh, well, Hillary Clinton is definitely an expert in that field, isn't she? But I don't think that Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton are in the same category at all. Let me put it that way. I think, in fact, they are as different as night and day, contrary to Prince Andrew's reputation.
Well, definitely. Listen, you'll have to look up, Lady C, the word slapper after the programme. But can I ask you, do you think that Prince Andrew has actually been given a hard time, given the fact that he's been made or found guilty of no crimes, and settled out of court with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, with no admission of any guilt.
Oh, I think undoubtedly he's been given a hard time. And, you know, I actually am perplexed that people in this country don't realise that, you know, because he's a British prince, he's been hung out to dry. What about all of the Americans who were far more involved? You know, I think it's pretty unfair. And yes, he had a very inappropriate friendship with a very inappropriate person. But the fact of the matter is, and I know this personally because of friends of mine, that, you know, people really had no idea what Epstein was up to. I mean, when you're as decadent as he was, you don't go around broadcasting it to people you're trying to impress.
Yeah.
And I really think that people have taken a totally wrong line on this. And I have to say, there's one newspaper group in this country that spearheads an awful lot of this and was in fact responsible through one of their leading journalists for luring Virginia Giuffre out of her lair and which started the whole thing. And they are great cheerleaders for the anti-Prince Andrew campaign, which is to cover up for what they have done.
OK, now, of course, Virginia Giuffre is not here to defend herself, and she would challenge allegations made against her. And, of course, the Prince settled with her to the tune of several £1 million. But Lady C and Phil D, let's talk about Harry and Meghan, the butt of jokes at the Golden Globes last night. Take a listen.
Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix.
Talented comedian host Joe Coy also pointed the finger at and made a bit of fun about Harry scrambling around for cash.
How great was Imelda Staunton in The Crown? Wasn't she amazing? Her portrayal of the Queen was so good, Prince Harry called her for it and asked her for money. Like I said, I didn't write all these.
Oh dear, how do you think that will be going down in Montecito, Phil? They won't be happy, will they, the royal couple?
They won't be happy. When you start to become figures of ridicule, you are in trouble. I mean, that wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago when they first went out there. They were popular. And when you've fallen out with the woke lovies and they're starting to take the mickey out of you, you know that your star has fallen, I'm afraid. So, yeah, now this follows on from South Park, doesn't it? And a couple of other programmes that have, berated them. And everyone's laughing there. Everyone's just regarding them as figures of fun. And I think this year is going to be a real turning point for them. I think unless they pull something out of the bag, they are in for a bit of a nosedive.
Well, how might that briefly, Phil, how would that manifest a bad year? What could happen? Are we talking financial problems? Are we talking marriage on the rocks?
Well, I think, they've lost their Spotify thing, haven't they? They've run out of items at Netflix. The money's not flowing in. Unless they come up with some really good money-making schemes, they've got all the security to pay for and all sorts of, running costs. So I really think they've got to get hold of something to make some money. Otherwise, they are in trouble. And at the moment, there's nothing on the horizon.
How bad could things get for the couple, Lady Colin Campbell?
No, I can guarantee they're going to get an awful lot worse. Wait until spring. They have a real bomb coming their way in spring. I think they are going to be completely exposed before this summer. Let me put it that way. I think they are going to be in such deep trouble. It's going to be nothing that we can imagine. I think the chickens are coming home to roost in a very big way.
Briefly, you're speculating wildly, but what do you mean, Lady C? What might happen?
Well, I'm afraid I can't say beyond this, but believe me, I know what I'm talking about, and I know who's going to drop the bomb.
Oh, my goodness. Well, look, I hope you'll be here to commentate on it. My thanks to the royal dream team of Phil Dampier and Lady C. A fascinating conversation, I think you'll agree. But coming up, should nurses and midwives be struck off for misgendering their patients? And is it merely a belief that people can't swap sex? We'll debate that and so many hot stories from the papers very soon. But up next, tonight's panel of perfect pundits join me to run through all of the front pages, hot off the press. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Patrick Christys tonight with me, Mark Dolan, only on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Mark Dolan with you for all of this week, 9 to 11. And let's have a look at tomorrow's papers. They have landed. And we start with the Metro. Outrage over scandal boss. 1 million people say strip the post office, Paula, of CBE. More than 1 million people have signed a petition demanding that former post office chief Paula Venels loses her CBE over hundreds of sub-postmasters wrongly convicted of fraud whilst she was in charge. OK, next up, where shall we go, Josh? We got The Guardian. Here we go, Alistair as well. Scramble to clear victims of post office fraud scandal. And $10,000, the going rate to flee the horrors of Gaza. Also, Not Barbie's Night. The film Oppenheimer wins big as Hollywood awards season begins. Sun newspaper next. And Epstein victims claim Andrew in sex tapes shock. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton and Sir Richard Branson appeared in sex tapes filmed by paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, according to bombshell court papers. These, of course, are allegations at this stage and strenuously denied by those involved. Let's have a look now at the Daily Telegraph. Fujitsu may be forced to foot the bill for the post office scandal. Also, bottle of water contains 240,000 bits of plastic. A single bottle of water can contain 250,000 pieces of plastic, the study has found. Scientists have found a new category of plastic pollution called nanoparticles, which are created when microplastics break down even further. Well, that's a bit and got me rather dry in the mouth. OK, listen, lots of stories to get through. Let's get full reaction, by the way. Let me introduce my top panel tonight. We have Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. And how about this from a story inside The Telegraph? Channel 4 are at the centre of a diversity row tonight after they launched a protest against the appointment of 4 directors to the board because they are white. Channel 4 chairman Sir Ian Cheshire has warned that the board is now lagging behind its own diversity targets, with 14 of 15 members now due to be white. This clashes with the broadcaster's target to take 20% of staff from ethnic minorities, 12% from the disabled community and 6% LGBTQ+. So is it fair to rail against the appointment of white board members? Belinda?
No, I think it's horrible, this sort of anti-white rhetoric that's being sanctioned at the moment. I'm not surprised it's come from Channel 4. If you're good enough for the job, if you've got there on merit, that surely is better for the channel. In any job you have, people for customer service, for efficiency, for quality, get there on merit. And I say this as you know, a woman who abhors women's shortlists and women getting jobs just because they're women. I disagree. I think it's insulting. I think everyone has equal opportunities in this country. They work as hard as they can. Their talent should be recognised. But it's only ever white people that get it in the neck. And the country is over 80% white. Right? So they're complaining that 4 out of 5 are white. Well, isn't that around 80%?
89%, I think.
Yeah, 82% of British are white.
OK. All right.
I mean, you've just shot your argument in the foot because you said 4 out of 5 people in the country are white. Yeah, that's why 20% are meant to be from non-white ethnic minority communities on the Channel 4 board. And the fact is that...
If they're good enough for if they're there by merit, right?
But this isn't how it works, because I don't believe that 14 out of 15 are there on merit. I believe they're there because we have institutional racial barriers that mean that people from these backgrounds don't get those opportunities.
That's been debunked in report after report.
As it echoes like. The fact is that the media is still overwhelmingly white. You know, when I've seen other people's workplaces...
Have you looked in the mirror recently, Benjamin Butterworth?
Newsrooms are incredibly white places, incredibly privileged places, and Channel 4 is absolutely right to say that a board of one of the biggest broadcasters in the country being 93% white is totally wrong, and people shouldn't stand for it.
What about merit?
Merit is there. The fact is that this argument...
That shouldn't be a hard question to answer, but you're stuttering.
I'm not stuttering at all. What I'm doing is giving you an explanation, and that's that merit is not what's happening when you have all white, all men, all straight people in charge of FTSE 100 countries, major broadcasters, newspapers. Don't tell me that they were the only people capable of those jobs.
I'm just trying to unpick that word salad. Help me out, Carol.
He mentioned the words white and privilege in the same breath before, which really annoys me, because the assumption is there that everyone who was white was privileged. That's
not true.
That's not what I said.
Just have a look around. You did. You used the words white priprivileged people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That is not what it's like for people in this country.
all white people are privileged.
However, where does it say that, you know, you've got to you've got to have the right colour of skin for a particular job? That's not how it should be. You have to have the right talents for the job. But we both know that there is positive discrimination in many industries, including this industry, where someone of a certain skin colour gets a job because the company has to meet the tick box.
This idea that
and do you want to be that person, Benjamin, that ticks a box?
It's insulting
It's patronising. It's probably racist.
It's insulting that we have institutional racism in this country.
Who says we've got institutional racism?
Just look at Brexit.
We do not.
Just look at Brexit.
Benjamin, you didn't go there. You didn't go there, did you?
I mean, if Brexit was racist, why have 3.5 million EU citizens chosen to stay in the UK?
Well, most EU citizens are white for a start. But
the horror of it.
So they're racist as well.
The report that says Brexit is working.
If white people are only there on mediocrity, then why is it that the march of the mediocre straight white men, which is Brexit, has worked out?
You count yourself in that group, by the way.
I'm not straight. I hate to break this to you, Mark. The fact
You're
is,
sounding so racist, straight white men that voted Brexit.
In this
disgusting, Benjamin.
In this country, you have white people who are crap at their jobs, who give jobs to other white people who are also rubbish.
And are you saying there are people of colour who are not crap at their jobs? Are you seriously saying
Of course there are, but the fact is
there
the
not
barriers...
gay people who are crap at their jobs?
There are, not on this panel, but there are. The fact is,
I beg to differ on that.
People give jobs to people like them. And
Would
if you're
you like to
breaking
make
down those barriers, you need to have talent.
targets. As a contracted employee of GB News, would you be happy to make way for somebody that ticks a box? Are you happy to?
Because I'm gay.
Are you happy to die on that altar? Yeah, but you're white, aren't you?
Well, look, if all these panels were all white, then I might agree with that.
You are white and privileged.
Yeah, give up your job, Benjamin.
Yeah.
Give it up. Why not?
If all these
Put your money where your mouth is. You lecture everyone else on it.
There's a great irony in this, because I think this programme is really diverse. You have all sorts of people with all sorts of backgrounds, and that's great.
Well, you mean the channel?
I just think Channel 4 should look as diverse as these programmes do Monday to Friday.
You can't run businesses, you can't run corporations on diversity targets. You cannot. You have to employ the most talented people for the job. That's how it.
And how humiliating!
They're always white blokes.
One at a time.
Everything else is insulting for people of colour to know they have got their position because they tick a box of a target for that.
Carol, I've got bad news for you. You're our token northerner tonight.
I'm northern.
You tick a lot of boxes.
I'm from Manchester.
You're far too posh.
To raise other people up, you don't have to
Can I say a quick word? I'm a bit worried about this. We were told
Go on.
we should be drinking many bottles of water every day.
Yeah.
It turns out, according to the Telegraph, a quarter of a million bits of plastic in one bottle of water. I mean, so much for the experts, Carol.
You shouldn't worry about that. You drink so much cider vinegar in a day that you've got that to worry about.
My body's a temple.
Not the plastic in the water.
Free entry.
Yeah.
Keep drinking the
But it's not very good, is it? I mean, do you remember that huge effort in the 80s and 90s to get us to buy bottled water?
Yeah.
We were mugs in the first place, weren't we, Belinda?
Totally. Listen, there's going to be a scare story every day telling us what not to eat, what not to drink.
Do you believe that?
Until you're ill, that, you know, go get yourself checked out the
Benjamin, I
doctor.
think you've been drinking too much bottled water. I think it's messed with your head.
Look, you know, if you buy coffee, there's often ground-up cockroaches in coffee because that's where they live in the coffee beans, and that's accepted within the regulations.
That's just finished me off.
So, and that's why if you're allergic to seafood, then you're often allergic to coffee sometimes because of the cockroaches. So, you know, I'd rather have water than the coffee.
Thanks for
there you
that.
go. Bang goes.
Really good.
Back to me, Alistair. Bang goes our sponsorship from Costa. Listen, we've got lots more to get through. Prince Andrew is once again taking a kicking in the papers and has apparently locked himself away in a room, but things could be about to get even worse for the disgraced Duke as I crown tonight's greatest Briton and Union jackass. But first, should nurses and midwives be struck off for misgendering patients? And is it just a belief that people can swap sex or they can't? Well, the panel will be debating that. Sparks will fly. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Mark Dolan, only on GB News. See you in 2.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel. Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Time to return to the liveliest paper review on telly. More front pages have been delivered. We start with the newspaper. Post office scandal firm Fujitsu gets major UK government contract, something I mentioned earlier in my monologue, an absolute scandal. The Daily Mail, bombshell new pictures of partying on Epstein's paedophile island as court papers claim Tycoon had sex tapes of Richard Branson, Bill Clinton and, you guessed it, Prince Andrew. Just allegations at the moment denied by those involved. Shameless! As national revulsion over the post office scandal mounts, former boss still clings to her CBE and Lib Dem leader refuses to step aside. Times now fast appeals for wrongly convicted postmasters, and Prince Andrew, quote, was in Epstein sex tape. Daily Mirror, latest royal shock, new Andrew humiliation. When will it all end? Now court documents reveal woman claimed Epstein made a sex tape of the prince. He's never been good on television. Let's get reaction from my top panel tonight. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster, very photogenic, Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP, Belinda de Lucy.
Looks terrible in real life.
Never. OK, well, listen, let's have a look at that story in the newspaper. Post office scandal firm Fujitsu gets major UK government contract. Absolute scandal, Benjamin.
I mean, you know, there are a lot of questions to be answered here, and most of the focus has been on Paula Venables, the former CEO of Post Office. You mentioned it, I think, on the Metro front page. And I actually think this is where the real scandal lies. You know, it was Fujitsu, the people behind this Horizon computer system that clearly was making mistakes. They were the ones that were trying to pull the wool over the eyes. That's the phrase. And I think the idea they've got a new contract, look, it was probably negotiated before this current outrage came into place, but they should be having their 100 public contracts that they have reassessed. And I think the obsessive focus on Paula Venables, it's not to say that she isn't a guilty party in this potentially.
She certainly is.
But I think it's unfair because she took over in 2012. Yeah. This had been going on for 13 years. She was the first person to at least let outside auditors in to look at the system. And I think putting all the focus on her when there's some very rich people in Fujitsu...
She allowed people to be convicted and jailed, and some people even killed themselves. She allowed that to go on while this investigation was going. She was covering... She played a lead role in covering up the flaws of this company. This company had already, this IT system had already been tested in Newcastle in the mid-90s, and the same thing happened then, and yet a contract was given to them 20 years later. She played a lead role in covering this. This is a Church of England deacon, for God's sake, and people were killing themselves on her watch, and she let it go on.
And the point is that when you're the head of an organisation which fails so egregiously, you always go. It would be the same if it was a government minister.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more bothered about the £5 million payout she got when she left than the CBE. And I'm not defending her. Carol is, of course, right. I'm just saying that if we're the only person we focus on this is her, then I think you're going to miss the bad part.
Why has she never apologised?
I think
Actually, she has. She's previously said that she was truly sorry for the suffering caused to sub-postmasters who were wrongly convicted of offences.
and yet you look at Ed Davey, he's not apologised. You look, where are the Labour ministers from 1999 to 2010 who were involved? They haven't said anything. Who are they? So I kind of get Benjamin's point in as much as if you focus everything on her, you let everyone else get away with it. I say take all the scalps, quash all the convictions. Fujitsu should pay every single victim $600k now.
And why is Sunak not saying this? Why is Sunak not getting teams of government lawyers to get the compensation, pay to those people now?
But he's working, isn't he, to make sure that everyone gets exonerated, which are currently only £100.
But never mind exonerated. Pay them the money. They exonerate them in a minute, but pay them the money that they spent first of all. Sunak does not get how this has affected the fabric of this nation.
Okay.
He doesn't get that this is ordinary people who've been stuffed up by an organisation at the post
just to say, there's sort of 900 people were convicted, but there was there was a woman I watched on this morning on television this morning who. She tried to take her own life under the stress of this. And then when it came to the court case, they didn't have the evidence to convict her, so she wasn't convicted. But because of that, she's not entitled to compensation at the moment, despite having been put through hell.
Absolute scandal.
So there are more people who deserve compensation.
Speaking of Sunak, front page of the newspaper, Carol, Sunak revives Boris Johnson's levelling up pledge to woo the Red Wall. Are you buying it?
No. I don't think Sunak has a clue about the Red Wall, what they need, what they want. I don't think they like him very much. I don't think they like Starmer much better. But I don't, you know... Boris resonated with the people in the Red Wall. They liked him. And Sunak's not a Boris, and he's not going to be able to get them on side. I think they look at him and say, billionaire, married to a billionaire.
OK.
Doesn't understand what we are, who we are, what we...
Carol's not having it. Listen, a spokesperson from Fujitsu, the company behind the faulty Horizon system, said the current Post Office Horizon IT statutory inquiry is examining complex events stretching back over 20 years. The inquiry has reinforced the devastating impact on postmasters' lives and that of their families, and Fujitsu has apologised for its role in their suffering. Now let's reveal our pundits' brilliant Greatest Britain and Union Jackass.
They're all ready.
Carol, who's your Greatest Britain today?
My Greatest Britain is Leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt. She wants to erect a statue to honour the Navy for its contribution in ending the slave trade. A lot of people don't know that in 1806, Britain ended the slave trade. Our Navy, 36 ships crewed by 4,000 men, saved 150,000 men, women and children who are being shipped to the Americas as slaves. We saved those people. And for every 9 slaves that we saved, 1 Navy man died. So we paid the price. 17,000 of our Navy men died. But to hear a lot of people in this country talk today about the slave trade,
yes,
that is never mentioned at all. So Penny Mordaunt wants to...
You're right. We paid with blood and treasure.
And Penny Mordaunt wants to erect a statue. It's now been backed by various people, Michael Ashcroft and a professor of history today, because he says history's been rewritten. People don't know the real history.
What a brilliant nomination.
Can I just say, we've got to raise 70 grand to erect this statue. Please get people to go onto the Just Giving and look up the website West Africa Squadron. That's the
West Africa Squadron. Just Giving. What a great cause. Yeah. Benjamin, briefly, if you can, your
my Greatest Britain is Sadiq Khan.
Because
he did such an exceptional job improving the pay of Transport for London workers and saving Londoners from strike action. What a role model.
Your face is a picture. He's not winning, is he?
The plastic in your drinking water has really affected you. Belinda, your Greatest Britain.
My Greatest Britain is Major Mike Sadler. This is the last surviving original SAS member. He was recruited by David Sterling. He died at 103 last week. It's a salute to this legend and all the heroes of the SAS, past and present. But what a trooper. He won the Military Cross. He was parachuted into Nazi-occupied France.
A fine man and a true hero. I loved yours, lovely Carol, but I'm going to give it to Belinda and a true war hero. Today's Greatest Britain is Major Mike Sadler. May he rest in peace. OK, Carol, your Jackass.
My Jackass obviously is Paula Venel, Post Office boss. She's been accused of playing a lead role in covering up evidence in the flaws behind the Horizon IT system. You know, she hasn't properly apologised, whatever you said before. She said she was sorry for the suffering, but she hasn't properly apologised.
Sorry, but not sorry.
Sorry, but not sorry. She brought the government into disrepute, she brought the Post Office into disrepute, and she's responsible, with others, for wrecking the lives of hundreds of people.
Carol, you're going to have to get off that fence if this show's going to work.
Sorry.
Okay? Benjamin, your Jackass.
My Union Jackass is the alleged porn star Prince Andrew. I think, you know, he's got so much to apologise for, and he's bringing down the royal family. And those stories in tomorrow's papers that we've seen do not make for kind.
Can we just point
reading.
out he's been convicted of nothing and admitted nothing?
OK, what a fair nomination. And Belinda.
My Jackass is a new brand of climate warrior nutters. The tyre extinguishers, yes, they exist. They're a group of people that go around slashing tyres of gas-guzzling cars. But guess what they did in Bristol? They ended up slashing an electric car of an environmentally friendly man.
Outrageous. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to give it to Benjamin Butterworth. Yes, indeed. Prince Andrew is the winner. Thank you to my brilliant pundits. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Temperatures tumbling once more out there tonight. It's going to be a bit icy as well. We have seen a few snow flurries across parts of the south. High pressure is in control, keeping things pretty dry for most of this week. But with the easterly breeze, we have seen a few showers across the south. As I said, some sleet and snow mixed in. No huge amounts, but nevertheless, could see a covering in places. And wherever we've got showers, could be icy. So we do have a Met Office ice warning in place across the south for those slippery conditions into the early hours. Further north, some stubborn fog patches across northern Scotland, in many places dipping to or below freezing. Parts of the east may just stay above freezing, where we keep a bit more cloud. And some will start a bit grey on Tuesday, quite cloudy over northeast England, southeast Scotland. Any early showers over the southwest should scoot away. And for many, it's a bright day tomorrow, bright, fine winter's day. Feeling chilly, temperatures starting off around freezing and only getting up to 3 or 4 degrees. Feeling colder with the wind across the south, particularly if you're stuck under that cloud across northeastern parts of England. A bit more cloud coming into northeastern areas by Wednesday, and a few more showers likely, although these expected to be chiefly of rain, maybe some sleet and snow on hills. A sunny day generally across the south and many western coast. And again, fine and sunny through Wednesday, thanks to that area of high pressure. Temperatures just creeping up a touch, but still below average. And of course, it will feel colder once more in the wind.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else.